In the vast expanse of space, where countless stars twinkled like distant dreams, I never imagined that my ordinary life as a forest ranger would take such an extraordinary turn. That night started like any other, with me patrolling the remote areas of Blackwood National Park, checking for any signs of illegal camping or wildlife disturbances. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine needles and wet earth after the afternoon rain. I was about to wrap up my shift when a brilliant flash of light streaked across the sky, followed by an earth-shaking boom that made the trees around me shudder. My instincts told me it wasn't a meteor. The trajectory was too controlled, too deliberate. As I rushed toward the impact site, my heart pounding against my ribs, I couldn't shake the feeling that this night would change everything. The crash site was hidden deep in the forest, marked by broken trees and scorched earth. What I found wasn't a chunk of space rock or satellite debris, but something that defied everything I thought I knew about reality. Through the twisted metal and strange crystalline materials, I spotted movement, and then I heard it. A soft whimper, distinctly feminine, yet somehow different from any sound I'd ever heard a human make. That's when I saw her. She was humanoid, but definitely not human. Her skin had a subtle iridescent quality, like mother of pearl and moonlight, and her eyes. God, her eyes were like looking into the aurora borealis. She was trapped under a section of what I assumed was her ship, obviously injured and struggling to breathe in our atmosphere. I knew I had two choices: call it in to the authorities or follow my heart. The fear in her eyes made the decision for me. I couldn't let her become some government experiment. With adrenaline pumping through my veins, I managed to lift the debris just enough for her to crawl out. She was surprisingly light as I carried her to my cabin, her body trembling against mine. The next few days were a crash course in alien biology and trust building. She learned English at an astonishing rate through some kind of neural interface, and I learned that her name translated roughly to something like starlight in our language. She explained she was a scout from a peaceful civilization sent to study Earth from afar, but a malfunction in her ship's cloaking system led to the crash. What I didn't expect was how human she could be, despite her alien nature. She was fascinated by the simplest things: the way water rippled when you skipped stones across the lake, the sound of wind through the trees, even the taste of hot chocolate, which became her absolute favorite. Her childlike wonder at our world made me see everything through new eyes. But it wasn't just her curiosity that caught me off guard. It was the way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention, the gentle touch of her hand when she was trying to understand something new, the sound of her laughter that seemed to make the air itself sparkle. I found myself making excuses to spend more time with her, teaching her about Earth, learning about her world. As weeks passed, hiding her became increasingly difficult. Rumors spread about strange lights in the forest, and government vehicles started patrolling the area more frequently. I knew we were living on borrowed time, but I couldn't bring myself to think about what would happen when she eventually had to leave. Because somewhere between saving her life and showing her my world, something unexpected had happened, something that neither of us had planned for, something that transcended the vast distance between our stars. But just as I was beginning to imagine a future I never thought possible, we discovered that we weren't the only ones who knew about her presence on Earth. The real question was, how far would I go to protect someone who had become more important to me than my own world? It started with the drones. At first, they were just distant specks in the sky, easily mistaken for birds. But Starlight's reaction told me everything I needed to know. The way she tensed up, her iridescent skin shifting to a paler shade, her aurora eyes widening with recognition. These weren't normal surveillance drones. They moved with an artificial precision that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. We began taking more precautions. I taught her to stay away from windows, showed her the old root cellar beneath my cabin where she could hide if anyone came looking. But it wasn't just about keeping her hidden anymore. I needed to understand what we were up against. Working the afternoon shift at the ranger station, I started noticing things. Unmarked black vehicles parked at trailheads, men in civilian clothes carrying military-grade equipment, and surveillance gear that had no business being in a national park. One evening, while sorting through incident reports at the station, I overheard a conversation between two geological surveyors that chilled me to the bone. They weren't looking for minerals or studying rock formations. They were tracking energy signatures, the same kind that Starlight's ship had given off during the crash. Worse still, they had narrowed their search to a 5-mile radius around my cabin. That night, as Starlight and I sat by the fireplace, she finally told me the full truth. Her people hadn't just sent her to study Earth. They were looking for a new home. Their own star system was dying, and they had scattered scouts across the galaxy searching for compatible planets. Earth wasn't just a research project. It was a potential salvation for her entire species. "But we're not the only ones searching," she whispered, her voice carrying a weight I'd never heard before. "There are others, hunters from a rival civilization. They follow our scouts, waiting until we find suitable planets. Then," she didn't need to finish the sentence. The implication was clear enough. I found myself questioning everything. Were the men in black vehicles from our government, or were they something else entirely? The thought that we might be dealing with multiple alien factions made my head spin, but it explained the sophisticated tracking technology and why they seemed to know exactly what they were looking for. Our quiet evenings together took on a new dimension. While teaching her about human customs and culture, I also began planning escape routes and contingencies. She taught me about her technology, showing me how to recognize different types of alien signatures and energy patterns. The more I learned, the more I realized how naive I'd been about the universe and our place in it. One night, as we watched the stars through a small gap in the curtains, Starlight took my hand. Her touch sent a warm current through my body, like static electricity, but gentler, more intimate. "My people have a saying," she said, her voice soft but clear, "that the greatest discoveries come from the hearts of those brave enough to cross boundaries." The way she looked at me then made my chest tighten with emotions I couldn't quite name. But our moment of peace was shattered by the sound of helicopters in the distance. They were still miles away, but getting closer. Starlight's skin shifted to that worried pale shade again, and I knew we were running out of time. The fear in her eyes mirrored my own, but there was something else there too, determination, and maybe even hope. As we rushed to gather essential supplies, a plan started forming in my mind. If they were tracking energy signatures, we needed to give them something to chase, something that would lead them away from us. Starlight's crashed ship was still out there, and if we could get to it, maybe we could use it to our advantage. But with unknown forces closing in from all directions, we were about to discover just how dangerous playing with alien technology could be. Getting to Starlight's crashed ship in the dead of night was like playing a deadly game of hide and seek. The forest I knew like the back of my hand had become an alien battlefield, filled with searchlights and the distant whir of drones. We moved slowly, using the thick canopy of trees for cover, while the helicopters circled overhead like hungry vultures. Starlight's knowledge of their technology proved invaluable. She could sense the energy patterns of their scanning equipment, allowing us to time our movements between sweeps. But what truly amazed me was watching her interact with nature. She seemed to understand the forest in ways I never could, listening to the sudden silence of birds and the rustling of leaves as if they were warning signals. The crash site looked different now, cleaned up by whoever was hunting us. Most of the wreckage was gone, but Starlight insisted that the most important part, the ship's core, was still there, hidden beneath the earth where it had burrowed during impact. As we began digging, the sound of vehicles approaching sent us diving for cover. Through the undergrowth, we watched as a group of figures in dark tactical gear emerged from unmarked vans. They moved with military precision, but something was off about them. Their movements were too fluid, too perfect. Under the moonlight, I caught a glimpse of one of their faces. It looked human, but there was an unnatural smoothness to it, like a mask that didn't quite fit. Starlight squeezed my hand, her skin pulsing with a faint glow that she was struggling to control. "They're not human," she whispered. "They're biomechanical constructs. The hunters use them to blend in, to infiltrate and prepare worlds they want to claim." The revelation sent a chill down my spine. We weren't just dealing with rival aliens. We were in the middle of a silent invasion. Working quickly while the patrol passed, we managed to unearth what looked like a crystalline sphere about the size of a basketball. The moment Starlight touched it, it hummed to life, casting a soft purple glow through the trees. But the light must have triggered something because suddenly alarms started blaring from the hunter's equipment. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. The sphere began to pulse with increasing intensity, and Starlight's eyes widened in horror. "They've activated a containment protocol," she said, her voice shaking. "The core is going to release a massive energy surge. It'll act as a beacon, drawing every hunter within light years to this location." The sound of running feet and shouted commands grew closer. We had seconds to make a decision. Starlight's hands moved over the sphere's surface, trying to interface with it, while I stood guard with nothing but my ranger's flashlight as a weapon. The air itself seemed to crackle with tension, and I could feel the hair on my arms standing on end from the energy building around us. That's when Starlight said something that made my heart stop. "There's only one way to prevent the beacon," she explained, her voice thick with emotion. "But the cost, I don't know if I can ask this of you." Her eyes met mine, swirling with colors I'd never seen before, filled with both fear and something deeper, something that made my chest ache. The hunters were closing in from all sides now. Through the trees I could see more of those not quite human figures moving with predatory grace, their weapons raised. The sphere in Starlight's hands was growing brighter, its hum becoming a high-pitched whine that set my teeth on edge. Whatever decision we had to make it now. As I looked between Starlight and the approaching hunters, I realized that this moment would define not just our fate, but potentially the fate of two civilizations. The question was, what price was I willing to pay to protect both my world and the woman I'd grown to love? The choice seemed impossible until I remembered something Starlight had told me about her ship's core. It wasn't just a power source, it was a repository of her people's knowledge and culture. As the hunters closed in, a crazy idea struck me. If the core was going to send out a signal anyway, maybe we could change what that signal said. "Your people aren't the only ones looking for a home, are they?" I asked, keeping my voice low as we crouched behind a fallen tree. "The hunters, they're refugees too, aren't they?" The look of surprise on Starlight's face confirmed my suspicion. The subtle shift in her skin tone told me I'd struck a nerve. "They lost their world centuries ago," she whispered, her fingers still dancing over the sphere's surface. "They became nomads, taking worlds by force because they forgot how to ask, how to share." The sphere's pulsing had reached a fever pitch now, its light casting strange shadows through the forest. That's when an unexpected voice cut through the chaos. "She's right, you know." A figure stepped out from behind a tree. It was my supervisor from the ranger station, but something was different about him. His movements were too precise, his smile too perfect. "I've been watching both of you, reporting to both sides. Neither of your peoples need to fight." The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. He'd been a sleeper agent all along, but for whom? Starlight's grip on the sphere tightened, her skin flickering between colors I'd never seen before. The hunters had stopped advancing, their weapons still raised, but their stance uncertain. "There's something all of you need to know about Earth," I said, standing slowly with my hands raised. "We've made countless mistakes, fought endless wars, but we've also learned something precious. How to begin again, how to share our world with those who are different from us." The sphere in Starlight's hands suddenly shifted color, responding to something in my words. "The core," she gasped. "It's not just storing knowledge. It's learning, adapting. It's combining your human experiences with my people's technology." Her eyes met mine with a new understanding. But before we could act on this revelation, the night sky lit up with another arrival. A massive ship, different from both the hunters' vessels and Starlight's technology, broke through the cloud cover. Its design was somehow familiar, yet utterly alien. "That's impossible," Starlight breathed. "That's an ancient one's vessel. They disappeared millennia ago." The sphere began to resonate with the new ship, creating harmonics that made my teeth vibrate. The hunters lowered their weapons, seemingly as awestruck as we were. My former supervisor's perfect facade cracked slightly, showing genuine surprise, perhaps the first real emotion he'd ever displayed. As the massive ship descended, the sphere in Starlight's hands projected something I never expected: images of Earth's history, but not just the conflicts and wars. It showed moments of peace, of different cultures learning to coexist, of humanity's constant struggle to overcome its divisions. These images merged with scenes from Starlight's world, and even glimpses of the hunter's lost homeland. Your world doesn't just offer physical sanctuary. The sphere suddenly spoke, using a voice that seemed to combine all of our languages. It offers something far more valuable, a lesson in coexistence that all of us have forgotten. But this moment of revelation was shattered by a high-pitched whine from above. The Ancient One's ship was charging some kind of weapon. Whether it was meant for protection or destruction, we couldn't tell. The hunters raised their weapons again, this time pointing them skyward. Starlight's skin began to pulse with energy that matched the sphere's frequency. I found myself standing at the convergence point of 4 different civilizations: human, Starlight's people, the hunters, and now these mysterious ancients. The next few moments would determine not just our fate, but potentially the future of all our species. The sphere grew hot in Starlight's hands, and I could feel its energy building towards something unprecedented. Looking at Starlight, I saw both fear and determination in her Aurora eyes. Whatever was coming, we would face it together. But first, we had to prevent what could become the greatest misunderstanding in the history of all our worlds, or perhaps facilitate the greatest collaboration. The sphere's energy reached a critical point, and in that moment, I did something either incredibly brave or monumentally stupid. I grabbed it from Starlight's hands. The combined knowledge of Earth and her people surged through me like an electric current. Images, emotions, and understanding flooded my mind. The hunter's generations of loss, Starlight's people's desperate search, and humanity's stumbling journey toward unity. The Ancient One's ship hung above us, its weapon still charging. But now I could sense something else. It wasn't charging a weapon at all. It was preparing to communicate in a way none of us had experienced before. The hunter's biomechanical soldiers lowered their weapons, responding to some silent command, their artificial faces showing genuine confusion. Using the sphere as a conduit, I projected the truth for all to see. The ancients hadn't disappeared. They had been watching, waiting for the moment when younger civilizations would be ready to join together. Earth wasn't just another potential colony. It was meant to be a proving ground, a place where different species could learn to coexist. The sphere's light enveloped everyone present, and suddenly we could all feel each other's experiences. The hunters felt the warmth of belonging that they'd lost centuries ago. Starlight's people experienced the hunters' generations of pain and loneliness, and both groups understood humanity's capacity for both tremendous conflict and incredible unity. But the real surprise came from the Ancient One's ship. As its communication beam finally activated, it revealed that Earth had been their creation. A planetary experiment in diversity, seeded with life forms from across the galaxy. Humans were living proof that different species could combine and evolve together, carrying within our DNA fragments of countless alien races. "Your guardian has proven our theory," a voice echoed in all our minds, seemingly coming from the ancient's ship. The strength of a species lies not in its purity, but in its ability to change, to grow, to combine with others. The voice paused, and I felt Starlight's hand slip into mine. Earth was never meant for just one species. It was designed to be a sanctuary for all. The hunter's leader stepped forward, their biomechanical facade melting away to reveal their true form, beautiful in its alienness. "We forgot how to trust," they admitted, their voice carrying centuries of regret. "We thought survival meant conquest." Starlight's skin glowed with a new pattern I'd never seen before, one that matched the energy signature of both the hunters and the sphere. "And we thought salvation meant finding an untouched world," she added, "when what we really needed was to find each other." The sphere in my hands began to change, its crystalline structure expanding and fragmenting into countless smaller pieces that floated into the air like luminescent snowflakes. Each piece contained the combined knowledge and experiences we'd shared, creating a network of understanding that spread through the forest. But just as we thought everything was resolved, the Ancient One delivered one final revelation. "The true test begins now." The voice resonated, "For we are not your guardians, we are your children, from a future where all your species have become one. We have traveled back through time to ensure our own creation." The paradox of this truth hit me as the fragments of the sphere began to rain down around us, each one planting itself in the earth like seeds of knowledge. The forest itself seemed to pulse with new life, as if awakening to its true purpose as a cradle for interstellar cooperation. Looking at Starlight, I saw the future in her eyes, not just our future, but the future of all our kinds. The hunters began to lower their weapons completely, and my former supervisor's artificial body dissolved, revealing another form of life we hadn't even imagined. As the Ancient One's ship began to fade from view, returning to its own time, I realized that our love story hadn't just been about a human and an alien. It had been about the universe itself, learning to love all its different parts, finding unity in its infinite diversity, and somewhere in the future, our descendants were watching, making sure we took these first crucial steps together. In the weeks that followed, Blackwood National Park transformed into something extraordinary. The fragments of the sphere, buried in the forest floor, grew into crystalline structures that merged seamlessly with Earth's natural environment. The trees began exhibiting bioluminescent properties at night, creating a spectacular display that scientists couldn't explain, but we knew the truth. The government couldn't keep it secret for long, not when similar phenomena began occurring worldwide. Other scouts and hunters came forward, revealing themselves to a humanity that was finally ready to accept them. My ranger station became something of an unofficial embassy, with Starlight and I helping to bridge the gaps between different species and cultures. The hunters, no longer needing their biomechanical disguises, established their first permanent settlement in decades. They brought with them remarkable technologies for environmental restoration, turning their centuries of nomadic survival knowledge into tools for healing damaged ecosystems. Watching them work alongside Earth's environmental scientists, I often thought about how fear had kept us all from seeing the potential in each other. Starlight's people arrived gradually, not as colonizers but as partners. They shared their advanced understanding of sustainable energy and space travel, while learning from humanity's resilience and creativity. The sight of alien children playing with human kids in the park became wonderfully common, their laughter mixing together in a way that made our earlier fears seem foolish. My former supervisor's true identity turned out to be that of a cosmic anthropologist, part of an ancient network of observers who have been guiding all our species toward this moment. He still works at the ranger station, though now he spends more time teaching interspecies communication than checking camping permits. The forest itself became a living laboratory of cooperation. The crystalline structures that grew from the sphere's fragments formed a natural network, allowing different species to share their experiences and knowledge directly. It wasn't unusual to find groups of humans, hunters, and Starlight's people sitting in circles around these crystals, experiencing each other's memories and emotions, building understanding that went beyond words. As for Starlight and me, our relationship became something of a symbol for this new era. We got married in a ceremony that combined Earth customs with traditions from her world. The hunters provided an energy field that allowed all species to perceive the event through their own senses, making it the first truly universal wedding in Earth's history. Looking back now, I realized that saving Starlight that night wasn't just about helping someone in need. It was about opening a door that had been waiting to be opened for millennia. The Ancient Ones, our future children, had trusted us to make the right choice when the moment came. They hadn't needed to interfere because they knew that love, whether between two people or between different species, would show us the way. Today, as I watch the sunset paint the crystalline structures in the forest with rainbow lights, I think about how far we've come. The hunters have found their home, not in conquest, but in cooperation. Starlight's people have discovered that survival doesn't mean having a planet to themselves, but sharing one with others who see the universe differently. And humanity has finally grown into its role as a bridge between worlds. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, Starlight and I sit on our cabin's porch, watching the forest glow with its new alien life. She tells me stories about her world, and I share tales about Earth's history. Above us, the stars don't seem so distant anymore. They're filled with friends we haven't met yet, all part of the grand experiment that is life in this universe. And when people ask me how it all began, I tell them the simplest truth I know. Sometimes the greatest adventures in life start with just deciding to help someone in need. Because in the end, love doesn't care what planet you're from. It only cares about where you're going together.